Okay, for today's training, we're going to cover case managers, assigning yourself as a case manager, case plans or goal plans, and then how to enter case notes into ServicePoint. So we're going to go to into Client Point, into the Client Profile tab, and the Client Information tab. We're going to go to the Case Manager tab. The first thing we're going to do is push Add to Case Manager tab. We're going to select the household. We're going to be the case manager for the household itself. Or if it's an individual client, you'll just leave it as individual client. Then there's the type. There's a ServicePoint user, and then there's a Me button, and then there's an Other. So if you're in the system as yourself, if you click the Me button, so for today's training, we're in the training site as training user number 1. If you click the Me button, your name will pop up, your title, your phone number, all information that's associated with your user license, the provider that you're assigning yourself to as the case manager, and then the start date. So once a client leaves a project, it's really important to go back into this section specifically and add an end date to your case management services. So making sure that you're no longer associated with that case file or that client file, so that you're not an active case manager. And then we're going to click Add Case Manager. So now you can see that you're a case manager assigned to this client for the Rapid Rehousing project as of today's dates. You're going to move next to the next tab over, which is called Case Plans. So this is where you add goals, and then we'll talk about how to add case notes. You also have this one section down below. So if you have your own goal plan that your agency developed or whatever, and it's a hard copy, Word or Excel document or PDF, and you want to upload it into the system, it's not required. You do have the option to do that as well. I know there might be some projects that will ask, case managers to do that. But for today's training, we're going to cover the goals section up here. So how to add a goal to ServicePoint, you're going to click Add Goal. So depending on the goal that you're actually creating, you might decide to check in the whole household into this goal. So if it's a housing goal, obviously the household is going to be included. If it's a goal that's very specific to an individual member of the household, you would go into that household member's file within ServicePoint and add a goal plan that's very specific to them individually. So if somebody had their own employment goals or educational goals or even maybe some medical or health goals they want to cover, you can assign that goal to an individual itself. But for today's purposes, we're going to pull the family up into this whole goal. Once you've assigned yourself as a case manager, there's a drop-down box where you can assign yourself as the case manager that's overseeing this goal with the client and working on this goal with the client. The date the goal was set, which is today's date. And then the next required data element is the classification of goals. So once you have a classification of goals, there's a variety of different classifications you can choose from mental health treatment to legal. Housing is one that's really a popular goal. There's also one for just general notes. So if you're not actually tracking your goal plans and you're just wanting to put in case notes of some kind, you can choose general notes. Whenever you choose a classification, there's types of goals that are associated with different classifications. So if you choose general notes, you'll note that there's 2 different case notes or shift narratives. So depending on what program, so if you're a case manager, case notes might be your selection. If you are like a resident manager or you're working in a residential project and shift, so you have to do a narrative for each shift. Shift narratives might be your selection. If you change your option to housing goal, so housing classification, now you'll see that the type of goal now is all about housing goals and options. So maybe it's achieve housing stability. So maybe you have housing, you just want to make sure it's stable. If you're going to maintain housing, if you're going to obtain independent housing, so whatever your goal plan is. Underneath the classification and type, you have a goal description. So if you want to give further clarification in the description of the goal, there's a target date option. So you can opt to say, well, I want to accomplish this goal by the end of next month. You can put a target date. Overall status, so if it's identified or if it's in progress or when it's actually closed. So if a person leaves the goal or if they achieved the goal, you can close the goal out. If the goal is closed, making sure that you fill in the outcome. So is it achieved? Is it partially achieved? And then if it is partially achieved, you know, there's a percentage you can fill in as well. Again, these are not required as far as like overall status is required, but anything else is optional. But we're just gonna leave this select. And then there's a closing date too. So once a client leaves or a goal is accomplished, you can put a closing date. There is a follow-up box option. So if you wanted to follow up on all your goal plans and track that within the system, you do have the option. Currently right now, I don't know anybody who uses the system to track goals in this way. It's really more for the use of case notes. So once you fill in all of this information that pertains to this goal, you can just push the save and continue or add goal. And then you get 3 subsections that pop up underneath. There's case notes, action step plans, and service items for this goal. Case notes is the most popular portion of this section. When it comes to goal plans, you'll add case notes associated with the goal that you just entered. So as far as housing, any case notes that pertain to housing, you would want to add here. So to add a case note, you click Add Case Notes. Make sure you add all household members into this case note for housing since you added them into the goal plan above. Select yourself as the case manager adding the goal. And then you would type up your note and save case note. So information you would include in this is really pertaining to anything related to the goal above. You can also note that these case notes are editable, so you can edit a case note. So if you forgot something, you can go back and say, oh, I forgot something and I needed to add more to this goal plan than I originally thought. And then you can save it again. Please note that there is a trash can not really close to the pencil to edit. If you do click on the trash can, which is deleting, so you're going to delete the case note, you will get a pop-up warning saying, are you sure you really want to delete this information? You do have the option to click no to delete this case note because you really don't want to accidentally push that, but you will get a warning before it will actually delete from the system. Underneath case notes are action steps planned. So this is an option if you wanted to give somebody a client an assignment to do. What's the action step they need to take? So maybe registering for school is one. It has to do with school. An action step is calling the school. A target date and overall status if you're really going to be tracking your goal plans across the system, and then you can save it. Service items for this goal, you can add a service transaction here as well. If you choose to add a service transaction, it'll take you into the service transaction portion of the system, which we're not going to cover today. We're going to cover it in a different training, but you can add services and associate it directly to a goal plan within Service Point. So once you finish, you can save and exit, and now you've created a goal plan. If you note, there's also this little column over here that says notes. So when you're doing future case notes that are associated with the goal plan, you don't necessarily have to click on the pencil to open the whole goal plan. You can just simply go to this column that says notes right here, click on the little notepad underneath, case notes will pop up. You can add another case note. To this section, instead of actually going in and editing and opening the goal plan. And so then you'll track your case notes here. And that's how to add a case plan and case notes to Service Point. Thank you.